My husband told his family that I pressured him into marrying me because I was. What would you do if you discovered the man you loved, the man you married, was systematically poisoning his entire family against you with a web of shocking lies? Because that's exactly where my nightmare began. I thought we were happy, truly happy. But one conversation changed everything, and suddenly my world was crumbling. It all started innocently enough. Last Thursday, my husband Thomas's cousin, Scarlett, messaged me about lunch. We weren't super close, but we got along, so I figured, why not? We met at a little bistro near my office, and immediately, I knew something was off. Scarlett was fidgeting with her napkin, wouldn't look me in the eye. After some truly painful small talk, she finally blurted it out. She had to tell me something. Apparently, at a family gathering I couldn't make. I was visiting my sick aunt. Thomas got drunk and started telling everyone that I had pressured him into proposing. He said I was terrified of being single at 30, constantly dropping hints, talking about all my friends getting married, basically manipulating him into proposing or I'd leave. My mouth just hung open. None of that ever happened. None of it. If anything, he was the one who brought up marriage first. Thomas was the one looking at rings online, asking what styles I liked. We'd been talking about our future since our first anniversary. Marriage was a mutual decision, a dream we both wanted. When I finally found my voice and asked Scarlett why she was telling me this, she admitted she felt incredibly uncomfortable keeping it from me. Especially since Thomas's mom, Arlene, and his brother Charles had been making snide comments about me at family gatherings for months, based on this bullshit story. I never even realized. Scarlett said even her husband, Nathan, was shocked by what Thomas had said, which is why she finally decided I deserved to know. I spent the rest of the day in a total fog. When Thomas got home that night, I confronted him. My voice was shaking as I told him exactly what Scarlett had said and demanded an explanation. He immediately got defensive, claiming Scarlett was exaggerating, that it was just an offhand joke everyone took too seriously. But when I pushed, he finally admitted he'd said those things, insisting it was just guy talk that got out of hand. I stared at him, bewildered. Why the hell would he say something so blatantly untrue about me? He started backpedaling, saying I was overreacting, that it wasn't a big deal. He kept trying to dismiss it as him venting, after we'd had a fight earlier that week about him forgetting our anniversary plans. I told him straight up, making up lies about me to his family isn't venting. It's a complete betrayal. The conversation went nowhere. He refused to admit how serious this was, and I was too upset to even think straight. I told him I needed space and spent the night in our spare bedroom. The next morning he acted like nothing had happened. Classic Thomas. Just avoid the problem until it goes away. For the next few days I tried to process everything. Then it hit me. This explained why Arlene had been so cold to me recently, why she'd made those weird comments about, some women will do anything to get a ring. I'd always just thought she was being her usual judgmental self, but now it all made horrifying sense. Her precious son had poisoned her against me with complete, utter lies. The following weekend was Arlene's 60th birthday dinner. Thomas insisted we still go, saying it would look bad if we canceled. I agreed, but only because I was determined to clear my name. Looking back, probably not my smartest move. The dinner was at this fancy restaurant, the whole family there. Arlene, Charles, his wife Paula, Scarlett, Nathan, and other relatives. The tension was unbearable. Arlene barely acknowledged me, and Charles kept giving me these smug, knowing looks. I tried to act normal to swallow my rage, but by dessert, I couldn't take it anymore. When everyone was finishing their cake, I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding. I addressed the entire table. I said I'd recently learned that Thomas had told them all a story about me pressuring him into marriage, and I wanted to set the record straight. I explained that it simply wasn't true, that marriage had been a mutual decision, and that I was deeply hurt that he would misrepresent our relationship like that. Everyone looked at Thomas. He was turning beet red. Arlene immediately started making excuses for him, saying he probably didn't mean it that way. That's when I turned directly to Thomas. Right there in front of everyone, I asked him, "Why would you lie about something so important to me?" And that's when he said it. He looked me straight in the eyes with this cold, hard expression I'd never seen before and said, "Well, it's not like you're some great catch anyway." I felt like I'd been slapped across the face. The entire table went silent. Even Arlene looked shocked. Without saying another word, I grabbed my purse and walked out. I could hear Thomas calling after me, but I just kept walking until I reached my car. I drove to a hotel nearby, checked in, turned off my phone, and just sat on the bed, numb, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The next morning, I finally turned my phone back on. 27 missed calls. A flood of texts from Thomas. Most were angry, saying I had embarrassed him in front of his family and ruined his mom's birthday. A few were suddenly apologetic, claiming he didn't mean what he said. But then the latest ones took an alarming turn. He was now threatening that if I didn't apologize to his mom for causing a scene, he would tell all our mutual friends that I had cheated on him with my ex. This is completely false. I have never cheated on Thomas, not once. I don't even talk to my ex. But Thomas knows that a mutual friend of ours went through a horrible public breakup last year because of cheating, and how our friend group reacted. He was basically threatening to socially destroy me with a lie he knew would be believed because of the context. I didn't respond. I went back to our apartment yesterday when I knew he'd be at work to pack some clothes and essentials. I'm staying with my friend Stacy for now, trying to figure out what the hell to do. This morning, Thomas sent me a long message saying his mom wants an apology before she'll allow our marriage to continue. As if she has any say in this. He even included a screenshot of a draft message to our friend group with his cheating accusations all written out, saying he'll send it if I don't fix things with his family. I'm at a complete loss. The man I married, who I thought loved and respected me, has been lying about me to his family, publicly humiliated me, and is now blackmailing me with more lies. I don't even recognize him anymore. Hey everyone. Thank you so much for all your comments on my original post. You have no idea how much they've meant. I've been staying at Stacy's apartment for almost 2 weeks now. She's been amazing, letting me crash in her spare room, even though it's basically her home office. The first few nights we stayed up late, drinking wine while I read her Thomas's increasingly unhinged texts. I was honestly shocked at how quickly he went from, "I'm sorry baby, please come home," to "You're ruining my life and I'll make you pay." Stacy kept telling me I needed to talk to a lawyer ASAP, especially after he sent that screenshot of his drafted message. First I resisted. Like, how did we go from marriage to lawyers in the span of a week? But after Thomas started involving his mom in our drama, I knew this wasn't going to resolve itself. The day after my original post, Thomas showed up at my office during lunch. He just waltzed in like he owned the place. I was in the break room when my coworker came in saying my husband was asking for me at reception. I felt ambushed. I considered refusing to see him, but I didn't want to make a scene at work, so I went out to the lobby. Thomas was standing there with this huge bouquet of flowers, like this was some romantic gesture instead of him cornering me at my workplace. I told him we could talk outside, and as soon as we got to the sidewalk, his whole demeanor changed. The flowers were just for show. He immediately started demanding I come home and apologize to his mother. When I refused, he got right in my face saying I was blowing everything out of proportion and that his family would never respect me if I didn't make this right. I tried to stay calm, to tell him I wasn't going to apologize for standing up for myself after he had humiliated me. But he kept cutting me off, getting louder and more aggressive until people walking by started staring. I finally said that if he couldn't have a reasonable conversation, I had nothing more to say to him. That's when he grabbed my arm. Not hard enough to hurt, but definitely to prevent me from walking away. I looked him straight in the eyes and said if he didn't let go of me immediately, I would scream and call security. He dropped my arm like it was on fire, then had the nerve to say I was acting dramatic, and that's why his family never liked me. I turned around and walked back into my building without another word. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely swipe my key card. When I got back to my desk, I had a string of texts from him saying I had embarrassed him again, and that I would regret not fixing this while I had the chance. That was the moment. I decided to take Stacy's advice and call a lawyer. The lawyer, Paula, not Thomas's sister-in-law, a different Paula, was straight to the point. After reviewing the texts and hearing my story, she said Thomas's behavior was following a classic pattern of escalation, and that I needed to protect myself. She advised me to communicate only in writing so everything is documented, not meet with him alone under any circumstances, start gathering financial documents, and consider filing for a legal separation. I felt sick hearing her talk about separation. Despite everything, there was still this part of me that kept thinking, but we're married. We're supposed to work through problems. Paula must have seen it on my face because she said something that really hit me. Marriage is a partnership based on mutual respect. Threatening to spread lies about you isn't respect. It's a violation of trust. That phrase, violation of trust, kept echoing in my head for days. After the lawyer appointment, I sent Thomas a message saying I wanted to meet in a public place to talk about our situation. I suggested Saturday afternoon at a coffee shop near Stacy's place. He agreed surprisingly quickly, which made me suspicious, but also briefly hopeful that maybe he'd calm down. I arrived early and picked a table with a clear view of the door. He sat down across from me and immediately launched into a speech about how much he missed me and how we needed to put this misunderstanding behind us. I just let him talk, watching as he cycled through what felt like rehearsed lines about forgiveness and moving forward. When he finally paused, I asked him directly, "Why did you tell your family I manipulated you into marriage?" He sighed like I was bringing up ancient history, and said he was just frustrated after an argument we'd had and wanted some sympathy from his family. He claimed he didn't think they'd take it so seriously or that it would get back to me. Called bullshit on that. I reminded him that according to Scarlett, he'd been saying these things for months, not just after one argument, and that his family had been treating me differently because of his lies. He tried to interrupt, but I kept going. I asked him how he would feel if I told my family he was emotionally manipulative and threatening, because that's what was actually happening. He leaned in and said in this low voice that he wasn't threatening me. He was just trying to protect himself, because I was trying to turn everyone against him. When I mentioned the screenshot of the message accusing me of cheating, he had the nerve to say it was just a bluff, to get me to come home where we could work things out privately. I told him there was nothing to work out if he couldn't even admit what he'd done wrong. He kept deflecting, saying I was making too big a deal about a few comments to his family, that everyone vents about their spouse sometimes. I pointed out that venting is complaining about real things, not making up complete lies that damage someone's reputation. We went back and forth like this for almost 2 hours. Every time I thought we were getting somewhere, he'd twist things around or minimize what he'd done. He refused to acknowledge that threatening to spread lies about me was wrong, insisting he was just desperate to save our marriage. By the end, I was mentally exhausted. As we were about to leave, he told me his mother wanted to have lunch with me to clear the air. I laughed out loud at that. The woman who believes I manipulated her son wants to clear the air? Thomas got annoyed and said Arlene was upset about the scene at her birthday and wanted to make peace. I told him I'd think about it, knowing full well I had zero intention of sitting through a lunch where I'd be expected to apologize for his behavior. The meeting with Thomas left me feeling even more confused and frustrated. The next day, I was scrolling through Instagram when I noticed something odd. Thomas had posted a photo of us from our anniversary dinner last year, with a long emotional caption about working through tough times and being committed to our marriage no matter what. He tagged me in it, which meant all our mutual friends would see it. This pissed me off for 2 reasons. First, he was creating this public narrative that we were just going through a rough patch but working it out. Second, he knew I would see it and have to either respond or look like I was ignoring his heartfelt message. It was manipulation, plain and simple. I texted him immediately. Take down that post. We are not working through anything until you take responsibility for lying about me to your family and threatening me. He responded saying he was just trying to show me he was committed to us and that I was being unnecessarily hostile. I repeated my demand to take the post down. After an hour of back and forth, he finally removed it, but not before adding a vague Instagram story about trying your best, but sometimes that's not enough. Later that same day, Scarlett messaged me, asking how I was doing. We hadn't talked much since our lunch when she first told me about Thomas's lies. I gave her a brief update, and she mentioned that Thomas had been telling people I was refusing to talk to him and that he was worried about me. The narrative he was creating was that I was the unreasonable one who wouldn't communicate, when in reality I was the one who had suggested meeting to talk. I asked Scarlett what else Thomas had been saying. She was hesitant at first, but finally admitted that at a recent family dinner, that I obviously wasn't at Thomas had told everyone I was going through something, and asked them all to be patient with me. Apparently, Arlene had gone on a rant about how marriage is sacred, And people today give up too easily when things get hard. The whole family was now under the impression that I was having some kind of emotional crisis. I thanked Scarlett for telling me the truth and asked her to keep me updated if she heard anything else. I was grateful to have at least one person in Thomas's family who seemed to see through his manipulation. That weekend, things escalated again. I had arranged to go to our apartment to pick up more of my clothes and some work files I needed. Thomas knew I was coming. We had explicitly discussed the timing so he wouldn't be there. But when I arrived, not only was Thomas there, but Arlene was too. They were sitting in the living room like they were waiting for an ambush intervention. Arlene stood up as soon as I walked in and started saying how worried they all were about me, and how they wanted to help. I was so shocked, I just stood in the doorway staring at them. Thomas had this concerned expression that I now realize was completely fake. I told them I was only there to get my things and wasn't interested in having a conversation. Arlene started following me around the apartment, talking about family loyalty, and how marriage takes work from both sides. I tried to ignore her, focusing on gathering my stuff, but she wouldn't stop. When she said, "Thomas told us everything about your insecurities around turning 30, I lost it. I whipped around and told her that her son had been lying to her, that I had never pressured him into marriage, and that he was now threatening to spread false rumors about me if I didn't apologize to her for his behavior." Arlene looked genuinely surprised for a moment before her face hardened. She said, "You're clearly upset and not thinking straight." Thomas jumped in, "See what I mean, Mom? She twists everything I say." That's when I realized this whole setup was to show his mother how unreasonable I was being. I grabbed my phone and started recording. I told them both that I was documenting this ambush, which they knew I didn't consent to, and that I would be leaving immediately. Arlene tried to block the bedroom door, saying we needed to talk like adults. I held up my phone and said if she didn't move, I would call the police for unlawful detainment. She stepped aside, muttering something about dramatic millennials. I grabbed what I could and left as quickly as possible. In the car, I broke down completely. The level of manipulation was terrifying. Thomas had deliberately set me up to look unstable in front of his mother. They were working together to gaslight me into thinking I was the problem. When I got back to Stacy's, I immediately called my lawyer. She advised me to send Thomas a formal communication stating that I would only collect the rest of my belongings with a neutral third party present, and that any further communication should go through her. She also suggested I start the legal separation process immediately. The next morning, I received a long text from Thomas saying he was sorry about the misunderstanding yesterday. He claimed he forgot I was coming, and his mom had just stopped by to drop off some food. He said my overreaction showed how much we needed to sit down as a family and work things out. The blatant lie infuriated me. I didn't respond directly, instead forwarding the text to my lawyer. Through my lawyer, I arranged to have a moving company pack up my essential belongings while Thomas was at work. Stacy went with me to supervise. We got everything done in under 2 hours. Clothes, personal items, important documents, and a few sentimental things. I left most of the furniture and household items. I just wanted out. I've also decided it was time to move out of Stacy's and get my own place. As generous as she's been, I need my own space to process everything. I found a month-to-month rental that I can move into next week. Thomas doesn't know the address and I'm going to keep it that way. Yesterday, I received a certified letter from Thomas. Inside was a handwritten letter saying he's been talking with his pastor, who helped him realize he's been unfair to me. He claimed he's working on himself and asked for a chance to make things right. The letter seemed sincere, which made me hesitate for a moment, until I got to the part where he said his pastor suggested we meet with his entire family to clear the air and start fresh with honesty. This feels like another manipulation tactic coordinated with his mother. I haven't responded to the letter yet. What pastor would suggest bringing his entire family into our marital issues? It's obviously another setup. Thomas has also started reaching out to mutual friends. Several people have messaged me saying he's been telling them he's worried about me, and asking if they've heard from me. He's building this narrative that I'm the one acting irrationally. A few friends have asked me directly what's going on, and I've given them the bare minimum. That Thomas and I are separating and I need some space right now. One of our closest friends, Eva, called me yesterday and told me Thomas had been telling people I was struggling with some personal issues that were affecting my judgment. When she pressed him for details, he was vague, but hinted that I might be having some kind of breakdown. Eva didn't believe him for a second. She's known me for years and said I sounded more clear-headed than ever when we talked. She wanted me to know what he was doing behind my back. I'm so angry about this. Thomas is trying to control the narrative by painting me as unstable or irrational, all while pretending to be the concerned, patient husband. It's such a calculated move. People believe I'm not thinking clearly. They'll dismiss anything I say about his behavior. My lawyer says this is actually common in high-conflict separations. One person tries to undermine the other's credibility to gain sympathy and support. She advised me not to engage in a public back-and-forth with Thomas, as it would just feed into the drama he's creating. Instead, she suggested I speak privately with the friends I trust most to ensure they know the truth. I spent yesterday afternoon making a few phone calls to my closest friends, explaining the situation without getting into all the ugly details. Most were supportive and said they'd already suspected Thomas's version of events wasn't the whole truth. A couple admitted they'd been uncomfortable with how he talked about me even before all this happened. Little comments that seemed harmless at the time, but now fit into a pattern. So that's where things stand. I'm moving to my own place next week. I've consulted with my lawyer about the next steps toward separation. Thomas keeps alternating between apologetic messages and attempts to make me look unreasonable to our social circle. Every time I think Thomas can't shock me anymore, he finds a new way to try to manipulate the situation. For now, I'm focusing on one day at a time, getting my own place, figuring out the legal process, and protecting myself from whatever Thomas might try next. I'll update again when I have more news. Okay, it's been almost a month since my last update, and things have gotten even more complicated. First off, thank you to everyone for your incredible advice and support. Your comments have been a lifeline during this nightmare. I've read every single one. I moved into my own apartment 3 weeks ago. I didn't tell Thomas the address, but that didn't stop him from finding out anyway. More on that later. The first week in my new place was surprisingly peaceful. I focused on setting up the basics, went to work, came home, and started establishing a routine that didn't involve constantly checking my phone for Thomas's latest manipulation attempt. My lawyer filed the initial paperwork for a legal separation, and Thomas was officially served the documents. I braced myself for the explosion, but it didn't come immediately. Instead, Thomas texted me asking if we could meet to discuss the separation like adults. I consulted with my lawyer, who advised me that while I wasn't obligated to meet him, it might help move things along if we could agree on certain terms without dragging everything through lengthy legal proceedings. She suggested meeting in a public place and being clear about my boundaries. I agreed to meet Thomas at a restaurant downtown, busy enough that he couldn't make a scene, but quiet enough that we could talk. When I arrived, he stood up as I approached the table, awkwardly leaning in like he was going to hug me or kiss my cheek. I stepped back and sat down immediately. No way was I letting him touch me after everything he's done. He started with an apology that sounded rehearsed, but sincere enough. He acknowledged that threatening to spread lies about me was wrong, and said he regretted it. He claimed he'd been in a bad place emotionally and lashed out in ways he wasn't proud of. I listened without interrupting, trying to figure out if he was genuinely remorseful, or just saying what he thought I wanted to hear. When he finished, I asked the question that had been burning in me for weeks. Why did you tell your family I manipulated you into marriage in the first place? What could possibly justify that lie? He started talking about how his mother had always had specific expectations for him, who he would marry when he would settle down, what his life would look like. According to him, when we got engaged, Arlene had expressed concerns that we were rushing things. Instead of defending our relationship, he'd given her a story that would make her feel better, that he was the one being sensible while I was pushing for commitment. I was floored. I asked him if he realized what he was admitting, that he'd thrown me under the bus to appease his mother. He tried to backpedal, saying it was just meant to be a temporary thing, until Arlene got used to the idea of us being married. He never expected the lie to grow or for his whole family to treat me differently because of it. I told him that regardless of his intentions, the damage was done. He had betrayed my trust in one of the worst ways possible. And then when confronted, he doubled down with threats and manipulation instead of owning up to what he'd done. He said he knew he'd made terrible mistakes, but he truly loved me and wanted to make things right. He suggested couples counseling, a fresh start, even moving to a different city away from his family's influence if that's what it would take. I told him it was too late for that. The man who humiliated me at his mother's birthday dinner, who threatened to destroy my reputation, who ambushed me with his mother at our apartment. That was the real Thomas, not the charming guy I thought I'd married. He got frustrated then, asking what it would take for me to forgive him. He kept saying everyone makes mistakes, and that throwing away a marriage over one bad comment was extreme. I reminded him it wasn't just one comment. It was a pattern of lies, threats, and manipulation that had been going on for months, possibly longer than I even knew. The conversation went in circles for almost 2 hours. Every time I thought we were making progress toward an amicable separation, Thomas would circle back to reconciliation. He couldn't seem to accept that I was serious about ending our marriage. Finally, I told him I needed to leave and that any further communication should go through our lawyers. That's when his demeanor changed completely. His face hardened and he said something that chilled me. "I know where you're living now." And then he said my new address. I tried not to show how shocked I was. I asked him how he knew that, and he smirked, saying he had ways of finding things out. I later realized he must have followed me home at some point, which was deeply unsettling. I left the restaurant feeling rattled. On the drive home, I called Stacy to tell her what happened. She suggested I speak with the building management about security concerns, which I did the next day. 2 days after our meeting, I received a massive bouquet of flowers at work. The card said, "I'm not giving up on us, T." My coworkers thought it was romantic, but I felt sick. It was like he was marking his territory, showing me he could reach me anywhere. That weekend, something even more disturbing happened. I was grocery shopping when I literally ran my cart into Arlene in the produce section. Of all the grocery stores in the city, she just happened to be at mine. She acted surprised to see me, but I'm 100% certain it wasn't a coincidence. Arlene started talking to me as if nothing had happened, asking how I was doing in that fake concerned voice. When I tried to politely extract myself, she grabbed my arm and said she wanted to have a mother-daughter talk. I told her I wasn't interested and that if Thomas had put her up to this, they both needed to respect my boundaries. That's when she dropped the act. She told me I was breaking her son's heart over a silly misunderstanding, and that I needed to grow up and work on my marriage. She said divorce wasn't an option in their family, and that I needed to stop being selfish. I looked her straight in the eyes and told her that her son had admitted to me he lied to her about our relationship to make her happy. I asked if Thomas had told her that part. She seemed genuinely confused for a moment. I took the opportunity to tell her that while I had once hoped we could have a good relationship, her constant interference and willingness to believe the worst about me had made that impossible. She started saying I was twisting Thomas's words, and that I had always tried to come between him and his family. Other shoppers were starting to stare. I told her firmly that this conversation was over, left my half-filled cart right there, and walked out. When I got to my car, I had 3 texts from Thomas asking why I was upsetting his mother. So, not only had Arlene tracked me to my grocery store, but she was reporting back to Thomas in real time. I felt like I was being stalked by his entire family. The next day, I came home from work to find Thomas sitting in his car in the visitor parking section of my building. He rolled down his window as I walked past, calling out that he just wanted to talk. I ignored him and went inside, immediately calling building security. By the time they went out to check, he was gone. This cat-and-mouse game continued for days. Thomas would show up at places he knew I'd be. He'd send messages alternating between apologetic and accusatory. Sometimes he'd claim he was respecting my space, only to appear at my workplace the next day. After a particularly stressful week, I decided to accept an invitation from my friend Eva to spend the weekend at her lake house. I needed to get away from the city and clear my head. I told only Stacy where I was going and made her promise not to tell anyone else. The lake house was exactly what I needed. Peaceful, isolated, with no cell service except near the main road. Eva and her husband, Ryder, were the perfect hosts, giving me space when I needed it, but also providing company and distraction. On Saturday evening, we were having dinner on the deck when Ryder's phone buzzed. He checked it and his expression changed. He showed the phone to Eva, who looked equally concerned. They were obviously trying to decide whether to tell me something. I asked them what was wrong. After some hesitation, Ryder showed me his phone. It was an Instagram post from Thomas, a throwback photo of me and Thomas at that same lake house from a trip 2 years ago. The caption read, "Missing these perfect weekends with my wife. Hope to recreate this special memory soon." I was stunned. Thomas knew I was at the lake house. The timing was too perfect to be coincidental. He was sending me a message. He knew where I was even though I'd told almost no one. Eva and Ryder were spooked too. We checked all the doors and windows that night, even though the rational part of me knew Thomas probably wasn't actually at the lake. He was just letting me know that he could track my movements. I tried to enjoy the rest of the weekend, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. On Sunday afternoon, we were packing up to leave when a car pulled into the driveway. My heart nearly stopped until I realized it was just the neighbor coming to borrow something from Ryder. When I got back to my apartment that evening, there was a note taped to my door. It simply said, "We need to talk. This has gone far enough." I recognized Thomas's handwriting immediately. I took the note directly to the building manager, who checked the security footage. Sure enough, it showed Thomas talking his way past the front desk by claiming he was my brother dropping off an important document. The building manager was apologetic and promised to circulate Thomas's photo to all security personnel with strict instructions not to let him in under any circumstances. I thanked him but still felt violated. My own home didn't feel safe anymore. The next morning, Thomas sent me a long text. He said he'd been thinking about everything and realized his approach wasn't working. He apologized for showing up uninvited and for the Instagram post. He said he was having trouble accepting that our marriage was over, but would try to respect my decision. I didn't respond. I'd heard similar promises from him before, only to have him show up at my workplace or apartment days later. For about a week things were quiet. No texts, no surprise visits, no flowers at work. I started to relax a little, thinking maybe Thomas had finally accepted reality. Then I remembered our wedding anniversary was coming up the following week. Knowing Thomas, he would use it as an opportunity for another grand gesture. I decided to be proactive. I arranged to take the day off work and planned to spend it with Stacy at a spa in a neighboring city, well away from anywhere Thomas might look for me. The night before our anniversary, I had trouble sleeping. I kept thinking about how different my life was from what I'd imagined when we got married. I thought we'd be celebrating our anniversary together, maybe planning for the future. Instead, I was literally hiding from my husband, afraid of what dramatic gesture he might attempt next. Our anniversary came, and I successfully avoided whatever Thomas had planned by being nowhere near my usual locations. Stacy and I had a relaxing day at the spa, and I kept my phone off the entire time. When I finally turned it back on that evening, I had dozens of notifications, messages from Thomas, of course, but also from mutual friends asking if I was okay. Apparently, Thomas had gone to my office with an enormous bouquet and a photographer, planning to recreate our first date during my lunch break. When I wasn't there, he'd made a scene, demanding to know where I was and accusing my coworkers of hiding information from him. Security had eventually escorted him out. He'd also posted a long public message on Facebook about fighting for our marriage and not giving up on love, tagging me and dozens of our friends. The post included private details about our relationship that made me cringe with embarrassment. I was mortified but also angry. Thomas was using public spectacle to pressure me, knowing how much I hate being the center of drama. It was manipulation, pure and simple, designed to make me so uncomfortable that I'd give in just to make it stop. I spent that evening responding to concerned messages from friends, trying to explain the situation without getting into all the ugly details. Most were supportive, though a few suggested I should at least talk to him, given how hard he was trying. They didn't understand that his trying was exactly the problem. He was trying to force me back through pressure and public embarrassment rather than respecting my decision. So, you won't believe what happened yesterday after that whole anniversary disaster. Thomas's brother Charles posted this insane rant on Facebook about family loyalty and how some people need to learn to back off and respect boundaries, and he tagged Thomas and Arlene in it. At first I thought maybe I was reading too much into it, but then I saw the comments. Paula, Charles's wife, wrote, "Finally someone said it." And Thomas responded with, "Real family doesn't stab you in the back when you're down." And then Arlene jumped in, calling Charles ungrateful and disloyal. It turned into this massive public family meltdown right there on Facebook. Apparently, what happened is Charles found out Thomas had been going through his phone trying to find my new address. And when Charles confronted him, Thomas flipped out and told Arlene that Charles was taking my side against the family. Arlene then called Charles's house at like 2 a.m., screaming about how he was betraying his brother when Thomas needed support. Stacy's cousin works with Paula and texted Stacy screenshots of everything before they deleted it all. Thomas apparently showed up at Charles and Paula's house drunk at midnight, demanding they help him fix things with me. When they refused, he started accusing Charles of always being jealous of him and trying to sabotage his relationships. The whole thing exploded into this huge family civil war with people taking sides. Even Arlene's sister jumped in, saying Arlene needed to stop enabling Thomas's obsessive behavior. Her words, not mine. I'm sitting here watching their entire family implode over my marriage, while Thomas keeps making himself the victim. It's actually terrifying seeing how quickly his mask dropped with his own family when they wouldn't go along with his plan. If he's willing to destroy his relationship with his brother over this, what would he do to me if I went back? The weirdest part is I haven't had to do anything. They're all turning on each other without any input from me. Thomas's manipulation is finally backfiring. And it's honestly both satisfying and scary to watch. I'll update again if anything significant happens. Thanks again for all your support. You guys have honestly kept me sane through this whole nightmare. Okay everyone, so it's been 2 months since my last post, and a lot has happened. So, here's the finale to this whole nightmare with Thomas. After that whole Facebook meltdown with his family, Thomas went completely silent for like a week. No text, no stalking, nothing. I was starting to think maybe he'd finally backed off when I got served with divorce papers at work. Yes, he filed first. After months of refusing to accept it was over and stalking me across the city, he suddenly decided to be the one to file. At first I was confused as hell, but then my lawyer called saying Thomas wanted to do a quick, uncontested divorce where we'd basically just split everything 50-50 and be done with it. After all his dramatic fighting for our marriage bullshit, he suddenly wanted out ASAP. My lawyer was suspicious, but said if he was being reasonable, we should take the opportunity. 2 days later I found out why the sudden change. Thomas had started dating someone new already, some girl from his gym. He'd posted a photo with her on Instagram with the caption, "Sometimes the universe has other plans." Like he wasn't just obsessively trying to get me back days earlier. The audacity of this man is truly unbelievable. Honestly, I was so relieved. I signed those papers so fast, my lawyer was like, maybe read them first. But they were exactly what she said, 50-50 split, no alimony, clean break. We were officially divorced 3 weeks later. Thomas even let me keep all the wedding gifts from my side of the family without arguing. The fallout with his family has been wild, though. That Facebook fight was apparently just the beginning. Charles and Arlene are basically not speaking anymore after Charles told her she needed therapy for her obsession with controlling Thomas's life. Paula told Stacy's cousin that Arlene actually showed up at the gym to approve of Thomas's new girlfriend. The new girl must have passed the test because now Arlene posts about her constantly, calling her the daughter I always wanted, which is a direct dig at me that I find hilarious rather than hurtful. Thomas texted me last week saying he appreciated how maturely I handled everything, and that he wishes me the best. This from the man who was basically stalking me 2 months ago. I didn't respond because FCK that, but it just shows how quickly he rewrote our entire history in his head once he had a new target for his attention. As for me, I just signed a lease on a new apartment across town, got a promotion at work, and have zero interest in dating anyone anytime soon. My lawyer actually helped me draft a cease and desist letter to send if Thomas ever starts his stalking bullshit again. But so far he's been too obsessed with creating his new perfect relationship narrative to bother with me. Every single one of our mutual friends now knows exactly what happened. Not because I went around telling everyone, though I did tell my closest friends the truth, but because Thomas's behavior was so erratic and public that nobody believes his version of events anymore. So that's it. I'm officially divorced from a man who told his family I manipulated him into marriage, publicly humiliated me at his mom's birthday, threatened to spread lies about me cheating, stalked me for weeks, and then suddenly moved on like none of it happened. The emotional whiplash of the past few months has been unreal. Looking back at my first post, I can't believe I ever questioned whether I was overreacting. This man and his family showed me exactly who they are. And I'm so damn glad I got out before wasting any more years of my life with them. I mean, can you believe any of this? Has anyone else experienced a partner who went to such extreme lengths to manipulate a situation or control the narrative? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd really love to hear your thoughts and experiences.